whose side were you on in the Clint Bowyer versus Ryan Newman fight thing? I don't know if we can really call it a fight, honestly. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. We're going to be talking a little bit more about Saturday night's All-Star race, because that race was just too good to only talk about in one video. We'll talk a little bit more about that race, but first we want to talk about the fight thing between Ryan Newman and Clint Bowyer, because NASCAR came out afterwards and talked about any possible penalties, any possible repercussions going forward. So that's what we're going to talk about here to start with. But before I get started, I want to remind everybody that you have 5 days until May 25th to send me things to my P.O. box, and I will show it off and shout you out in an upcoming episode in probably about a week or two. Unfortunately, since I'm moving out of this apartment, moving out of the city in a couple weeks, I have to close that P.O. box. I might open one up in the distant future, but unfortunately this is kind of going to be your last chance to send me anything for the time being. But I appreciate all the amazing stuff you guys have sent me so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all send me here in the next couple weeks. So if you've been sitting on something, you wanted to send it to me, yeah, this is kind of like the final warning, I guess. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about the fight. So if you watched Saturday night's All-Star race, not only was it an amazing event, not only was the open race maybe the greatest 50 laps or so of racing I've ever seen, but the All-Star race main event actually was pretty darn awesome as well. However, what really set this race apart for me, at least, was the scuffle between Ryan Newman and Clint Bowyer at the end of this thing. If you missed it, here's the clip of basically what happened. No audio, of course, but on pit road afterwards, Clint Bowyer runs up to Newman's car, starts throwing some little punches with his helmet still on, which I talked about in my episode the other day. Took some points away for that. What I didn't show you guys late Saturday night was this clip that came out afterwards. This is after that initial little scuffle. The two drivers got in each other's faces for a brief moment and traded a few words, but here's that clip. Gosh, this is great. Why is it always the older drivers getting into fights these days, I feel like? We need the young guys to get involved too. All these Ryan Blaney's and Chase Elliott's and Bubba Wallace's, they're all friends with each other, man. We need some of them to hate each other or something. But yeah, a couple veterans here, Ryan Newman, Clint Bowyer, really thought that trading back and forth was quite hilarious, personally. I mentioned this is something that sets NASCAR apart, and here's what I mean. You know, we had drivers right there actually throwing punches. In the NBA, if you throw a punch, you're immediately suspended for some number of games. Baseball, I think also you're automatically suspended for some number of games, especially if you land a punch on somebody. In most other sports, punching, fighting like this, while fans, I think, sort of encourage it, I think fans do enjoy when players get into it a little bit, the league definitely does not support it. And I'm not saying NASCAR necessarily supports fighting like this, but they're definitely, of all major sports, they're the ones that kind of take the most hands-off approach when it comes to fighting than any other major sport in America. And I definitely applaud NASCAR for that. I mean, you see there, when Clint Bowyer and Ryan Newman first got into it by Newman's car, it wasn't a NASCAR official that came to break it up. It was crew members. That's the way NASCAR always is. The officials are never the first ones to get involved. And if you want proof, here's a clip from NASCAR's Scott Miller shortly after the incident, after he'd actually talked to both Ryan Newman and Clint Bowyer in, a hauler meeting, talking about future penalties, talking about what he thought of the incident. And as you can see, here's a high up at NASCAR, the guy who's basically in charge of refereeing these types of things, basically acting like it was nothing.
Well, I mean, obviously they had a little difference of opinion out there on the racetrack, and they had a little difference of opinion here in the trailer. But we think we kind of understand what went on out there. I think they're in a pretty good place. We're going to keep an eye on it. I think we're in a good place with them, but we'll have to certainly monitor that.
Penalties coming?
I don't think so, no.
You heard him say it there at the end, no penalties expected for Ryan Newman or Clint Bowyer, and that's, I think, the right call from NASCAR. NASCAR, like I said, very hands-off when it comes to these types of things. The only time we usually see them get involved is when drivers use their cars as weapons or something. Like when Kyle Busch in 2011 wrecked Ron Hornaday under caution, they suspended Kyle Busch for a race. Or when Matt Kenseth wrecked Joey Logano in 2015, they suspended him for 2 races. When Jeff Gordon wrecked Clint Bowyer in 2012, oh, wait, what's this? Oh, they didn't suspend Jeff Gordon for that. Well, then why did they suspend Matt Kenseth for 2 races? My earpiece must be messing up. I must not be hearing that stat correctly. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm still very salty about that. The favoritism in NASCAR. Goodness me. But needless to say, when it comes to drivers actually getting in fights, like fist fights or wrestling, whatever it may be, NASCAR's usually pretty hands-off. We saw this earlier this year when Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell got into a brief fight on pit road at Phoenix. NASCAR didn't enforce any penalties in that instance. And it sounds like nothing is coming here for Bowyer or Newman, which I think is the right decision, but I think it is interesting. I think that's something that NASCAR fans should be, I guess thankful for. I guess not every NASCAR fan is going to enjoy when drivers fight, but I think most do. And I think it's something that NASCAR fans should be thankful for, that our sport isn't nearly as hands-on, isn't nearly trying to micromanage the players or the drivers as much as other sports are. In the NBA, what's the rule? If like a scuffle breaks out on the court where people just get in each other's faces or maybe shove a little bit, if you're on the bench and you so much as step a toe onto the basketball court, you're immediately like suspended. I mean, that's how freaking serious it is in the NBA, and other sports are similar in a lot of ways too. You know, I like that NASCAR is a lot more loose about this. I think it shows that it still does have appreciation for its roots, where it comes from. I mean, remember, NASCAR, when it first really came into the national scene back in that Daytona 500, late 70s, that race, first one ever broadcasted in its entirety on national TV, ended with a fight. Fighting has been a part of NASCAR's DNA literally since the beginning of its televised history. So I like that NASCAR continues to not overreact to these types of situations. I understand if you wreck a guy on purpose, especially a bad wreck like we saw, like the Gordon one, like the Kenseth one, like the Kyle Busch one, I understand then penalties definitely should be thrown your way, and I completely agree with that as long as you're consistent with it, NASCAR, which you have not been. But fighting on pit road like this, little scuffles, I like that NASCAR kind of just says, boys, have at it. I don't know if that's actually the rule anymore. That used to be kind of the rule. I think they've gone away from that technically, or at least they don't use those words anymore, but that's still kind of the mentality NASCAR has in these situations, and I think that's great. I think that's what makes NASCAR awesome. Now, I asked you guys last night on Twitter whose side you were on in this Ryan Newman, Clint Bowyer situation. I put a poll on Twitter, so you know what time it is. It's time for the Twitter question of the week, sponsored by my good friends at Ridgewallet. But there you can see that is the Twitter poll right there. I asked you guys whose side you were on, and I'm actually surprised it was this close, but Ryan Newman came out slightly ahead. I gave you guys my opinion Saturday night. I'm more on Newman's side. As far as the on-track stuff, I think both drivers were kind of in the right and in the wrong pretty equally. Bowyer was mad that Newman spun him on the cooldown lap, but NASCAR on Fox actually had a replay of that, and it looked to me like Bowyer came down on Newman and kind of wrecked himself. I don't know that was entirely Newman's fault, but that seemed to be what really put Clint Bowyer over the edge. Ultimately, I can't be on Clint Bowyer's side, though, just because he ran up to the guy and started punching him while Newman was still in the car, basically defenseless, or unable to really fight back at least, and Clint Bowyer still had his helmet on. It was kind of the double whammy there, Clint. You can't do both of those, especially. You really shouldn't do either one of those. You shouldn't attack a guy when the guy's still in his car, and you also shouldn't attack a guy when you have your face protection on. But to do both in the same instance really didn't make Clint Bowyer look good. So I side with Newman here, and it looks like the majority of you guys did too. Some of y'all's comments were interesting though. It looks like most of the comments I got on this, the replies, were more pro-Newman as well, so I'll read a couple of those. Was Bowyer's way of approaching Newman okay? Not really, but it's totally understandable. Why though? I guess the why is mostly understandable, but yeah, the way he handled it, I'm not a fan of. I mean, I'm a fan of it from the sense that it was very entertaining to watch, but if that was my driver going to do that, if I was like a big Clint Bowyer fan and he went and did that, I'd be a little disappointed in him, but as a pretty neutral fan towards these guys, it was fun to watch. I'm on Newman's side because 1, you don't punch someone while they're still in the car, and 2, you don't do that with your helmet on. That's kind of where I'm at too. I like Clint Bowyer. I'm probably a bigger Clint Bowyer fan than I am a Ryan Newman fan, but Clint Bowyer got a little in over his head here, and yeah, I agree with that comment. Bowyer has every right to be mad about the on-track altercations, but he had his helmet on when he ran up to Newman's car. That's the only factor that puts one above the other slightly, but I'm just happy for a rivalry that might keep the sport interesting over the summer. Yeah, definitely agree with that comment 100%. That's what makes these fights fun when these little altercations happen. We can kind of take sides. I mean, it's all in good fun. I'm not like a Clint Bowyer hater now or anything. I still like Clint Bowyer a ton. But it's fun to kind of pick sides and debate who was in the right, who was in the wrong, what led up to this, what could happen going forward. Will we see more altercations in the future? I don't really think so, but I don't know. Thought it was very interesting, and thank you guys for responding on the Twitter question of the week, Twitter poll of the week, I guess this time, sponsored by Ridgewallet. Really appreciate Ridgewallet sponsoring the show the last few weeks. They make these super slim, super sleek, super durable wallets, unlike any other wallet on the market. I got this really cool navy blue one I've been using for a couple months now, and I love it. I'm sure you guys will too. Remember, you can go to ridgewallet.com/groovy, and you can get 10% off your order on one of these things. Go to ridgewallet.com/groovy. Special offer just for fans of this show. Huge thank you to Ridgewallet for coming on as a sponsor. Hope you guys take advantage of that deal right there. Now, as far as this altercation going forward, it might not be too long until we see a rematch. Good on people on social media for pulling up this flyer for an upcoming autograph session with Clint Bowyer and Ryan Newman appearing together at Bass Pro Shops just later this week. Oh, I love it. I'm sure there'll be like a barrier between them, but that's hilarious that, of course, the week after getting a big fight, you guys have to basically partner together at a sponsor pop-up. So that's funny to me, but I think the line for both of those guys will be longer than expected because people are just going to see what happens, if anything happens. Probably nothing, but if something happens. Just even like a little side eye that they give each other would be funny to me. But yeah, final thoughts about the All-Star race. The debate coming into the All-Star race every single year is, should NASCAR keep the All-Star race? Should NASCAR just get rid of it? Why bother with this All-Star race when it's basically the same as any other race? And every year these conversations kind of pop up leading up to the All-Star race, and I honestly don't really know why. I'm on the other side of that fence. I understand that the All-Star race doesn't always live up to the hype, but I think last year's was pretty good, this year's was obviously outstanding, so some years it definitely does. But the main reason I like the All-Star race, one, it gives the drivers an extra kind of week in Charlotte, in many of their hometowns, to prepare for the Coke 600, which is obviously a big crown jewel race for NASCAR. It leads up to that very nicely. I know the weekend of the All-Star race in Charlotte, they do special stuff where they have a lot of NASCAR drivers go into local businesses, local towns, and kind of just promoting the overall racing culture in Charlotte. I don't live in North Carolina, but if I did, I'm sure I would love the 2 weeks leading up to the Coke 600 with the All-Star race mixed in there. It's just a lot of racing, a lot of NASCAR going on all around that city and that state. And personally, in my opinion, I think the NASCAR All-Star race is the best All-Star event of any of the major sports. And for one main reason, the drivers in the All-Star race actually really want to win badly. The NFL Pro Bowl has become laughable because none of the players really care. None of the players really want to win. They're just out there trying not to get hurt and they're just having a good time. It's not that fun for fans to watch. The NBA All-Star Game, players don't try until the last maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Up until that point, it's just a dunk contest, I guess, which is fun to watch, I guess, but they're not trying to win. They don't care if they win. Major League Baseball's All-Star Game, the players are definitely trying to hit or to pitch well, but I still think then they don't really care if the team wins. They just want to do well individually. Versus NASCAR, where we saw in that open race how desperate Bubba Wallace was, how desperate William Byron, Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, how desperate so many of those drivers were to try to advance, to just have a chance at winning $1 million. That's what sets the NASCAR All-Star race apart from all the other All-Star games in this country. Even in the main event, with the aggressive bump drafting, with the 4 wide, the 5 wide, drivers, the competitors in this All-Star race really want to win. Maybe more than they want to win a typical race in the regular season. And that desperation leads to these crazy moves, leads to these tempers, leads to the drama that we saw Saturday night, and that's why I honestly think the All-Star race, it doesn't deliver every year. Every year isn't going to be fantastic like this year's was, but more often than not, I think it'll be good. More often than not, I think the All-Star race is an above-average race. It's hard for me to think of very many just straight-up bad All-Star races. A lot of decent ones, a lot of average ones, sure, but there's also a few really outstanding ones. Some of NASCAR's most iconic moments, one hot night, passing the grass, all that type of stuff, have come in the All-Star race. So the All-Star race doesn't lack entirely, historical moments and significance in that sense. But I think that's really my point here. I think the NASCAR All-Star race should stay, as long as there's sponsors for it, as long as the drivers and everybody in the teams can still afford to compete, as long as the schedule allows it. All-Star race should stay. Now the question of whether we should rotate it among different tracks, that's a different question for another day. I think there's some tracks that you probably couldn't rotate it to, but there are definitely other tracks you could go to in that same kind of just region of the country near where Charlotte, North Carolina is. Even if they keep it at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the next 10 or 20 years, I would be all in favor of it. I think NASCAR should keep the All-Star race because it's the one All-Star game, one All-Star event in this country where all the people competing in it desperately want to win. And I think that really just produces a great product. So I'm in favor of the All-Star race, and this year was another remembrance why, another reason why. But as per usual, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this year's All-Star race was just a fluke? Are you in favor of NASCAR kind of doing away with this All-Star race or maybe mixing up the location? Let me know what you guys think about the All-Star race down in the comments. I look forward to reading your responses. That's all I got for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll have more episodes later this week because we got to preview the Coke 600. I might do a paint scheme preview episode because a few drivers have revealed their Coke 600 patriotic themed paint schemes, and they're pretty awesome. So we might do a paint scheme reaction video together later this week. But yeah, as usual, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. You can check out the description down below and get Out of the Groove t-shirts to support me and support the show. I appreciate that a ton. And a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison, at G was the Stars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, and the rest of these amazing supporters. I couldn't do this without you guys. Couldn't do this without the continued support from y'all, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for continuing to support this show. Already said we'll be back in a couple days. More episodes coming. Remember to send me, last chance to send me stuff to my P.O. Box if you want me to show it off and shout you out in an upcoming video. Got just a few days left for that. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. See you guys again very, very soon.